Marvel is no ordinary company, and this is no ordinary story. This is the story of a publisher so desperate it pawned off Spider-Man and X-Men, then built a movie empire from the heroes it had left. In 1989, Marvel was profitable, famous, and suddenly in the hands of financier Ron Perlman. Perlman paid $82.5 million for the company, and he wanted more than comic books. He saw Marvel as raw material. Characters, logos, stories that could be squeezed across toys, cards, and licensing. That sounds smart until you see what was happening inside comic shops. By the early 1990s, collectors were buying comics like lottery tickets, sealing them in plastic and waiting for prices to rise. Marvel leaned into the mania with hologram covers, foil covers, special editions, and endless number ones. The pages still smelled of ink and cheap paper, but the business was drifting away from readers. Perlman also loaded Marvel with debt, borrowed money that a company must repay with interest. Then he used Marvel to buy other businesses, including trading card company Fleer. Revenue looked bigger, the empire looked broader, and Wall Street loved the story. But comic demand was becoming fake demand, driven by speculation instead of habit. A real fan buys the next issue because the story matters. A speculator buys 5 copies because the bag might become valuable. When a business starts feeding collectors instead of customers, the crash usually starts before anyone says the word. By 1994, Marvel had a new problem. It wanted more control over how comics reach stores. That fight mattered because distribution is the pipe, and whoever owns the pipe can choke everyone downstream. Marvel bought Heroes World, a distributor, and decided to send many of its books through its own channel. Comic shops were furious. Distributors were furious. The system jammed. Books arrived late, in the wrong quantities, or not at all. Retailers who needed reliable weekly inventory were suddenly gambling on basic shipments. Then, the speculation bubble burst. Collectors stopped hoarding. Prices fell. Shops closed. In December 1996, Marvel filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. And once the company entered court, the heroes were no longer the prize. Control of the corpse was. By the late 1990s, Marvel needed cash more than pride, so it kept licensing characters to outside studios. A license is simple. Someone else pays for the movie, and you let them use the character. That brings money now, it also hands away the upside later. Marvel had already scattered major rights across Hollywood. X-Men went to Fox, Spider-Man ended up at Sony. Other characters were tied up in older deals that had gone nowhere. The company that created the heroes could not afford to be their landlord and their filmmaker at the same time. Then the movies started working. Blade arrived in 1998 and proved a Marvel character could anchor a serious box office hit. X-Men followed in 2000. Spider-Man exploded in 2002. Each success raised the same painful question. If Hollywood could mint fortunes from Marvel's heroes, why was Marvel still collecting scraps? During the bankruptcy fight, one rival mattered more than fans knew: Carl Icahn. He wanted leverage over Marvel's restructuring, and restructurings decide who owns what after the wreck. On the other side stood Toy Biz, Marvel's toy partner, led by Isaac Perlmutter and Avi Arad. Arad understood characters as products, but he also understood that products need stories people care about. The fight was ugly, legal, and expensive. Courtrooms replaced comic conventions. Balance sheets mattered more than origin stories. When the dust settled in 1998, Toy Biz emerged in control of the reorganized Marvel. That outcome sounded almost absurd. A comic book legend had effectively been saved by the toy side of its own business. But survival is not the same thing as strength. Marvel was alive, leaner, and still dependent on licensing checks from studios that owned the glamorous part. The company had escaped the grave, but its best-known heroes were still sleeping in other people's houses. To change that, Marvel would need to risk the one thing bankruptcy had taught it to protect: cash. By 2005, Marvel had a radical plan. stop renting out the heroes, and finance its own movies. That was a frightening idea because making blockbusters is brutally expensive, and one flop can poison a studio for years. The architect of the plan was David Mizell. The internal champion who could actually shape the films was Kevin Feige. Their logic was sharp. If outside studios kept winning with Marvel characters, then Marvel should capture the upside itself. But the company did not have Disney money. It had a library and a reputation for surviving close calls. So Marvel secured a $525 million financing facility through Merrill Lynch. The loan was backed by film rights to a slate of characters. In plain English, Marvel was borrowing against its own imagination. There was another problem. Spider-Man was gone. X-Men were gone. The comeback would have to begin with heroes the rest of Hollywood had overlooked. In 2008, the first true test arrived with Iron Man. The stakes were vicious. Marvel Studios was trying to prove it could run a movie business in the same year the global financial system was cracking. Iron Man was not Spider-Man. He was not the safest character in the catalog. Marvel also cast Robert Downey Jr., a talented actor whose personal history made executives nervous. That risk gave the film its voltage. Tony Stark needed swagger, damage, and wit. Downey had all three. You can almost hear the metal clank in the cave workshop as the whole company waits on one opening weekend. Iron Man worked. Then Marvel added a tiny promise after the credits: Nick Fury and the idea of a bigger universe. The Incredible Hulk followed the same year, and 4 years later, the Avengers proved the bet was no stunt. It was a new industrial system for Hollywood. Marvel's comeback was not clean, and it was never inevitable. A debt-fueled comic boom broke the company, licensing deals kept it alive, and one financing gamble turned leftovers into the center of modern blockbuster culture. Disney bought Marvel in 2009 for $4 billion, and films from the Marvel Cinematic Universe have since generated more than $30 billion at the global box office. From Bankruptcy Court to the biggest screen on Earth, that is how Marvel stopped selling its heroes and started owning